Shielding the Imperial Palace. For 10,000 years, the Emperor has sat bound to the Golden Throne, seemingly a paralyzed corpse, yet his psychic hand actively shapes reality and resurrects fallen heroes. Today, we break down every time the Master of Mankind intervened to save humanity, starting with the shielding of the Imperial Palace. Beneath the Imperial Palace on Terra, there is a webway tunnel. Magnus the Red accidentally flooded it with demons during the Horus Heresy when his attempt to warn the Emperor destroyed the psychic wards protecting it. The Emperor moved to contain the breach, and he hasn't stopped ever since. From the Golden Throne, he maintains a continuous psychic barrier inside the tunnel, a containment field preventing the demonic forces on the other side from pouring out directly beneath the seat of human civilization. The barrier requires his sustained, active focus to keep standing, and every second he diverts his attention from it is a second that weakens its strength. This means that the Emperor is actively fighting a never-ending war. He has been fighting it for 10,000 years without pause, sustaining the Astronomicon, soul-binding incoming Psykers, and channeling power through living saints when needed. The Webway War is just one of the things he's doing at the same time. The Storm of the Emperor's Wrath. The Age of Apostasy was one of the darkest periods in Imperial history. For roughly a century, a fanatically corrupt religious leader named Goj von Dyer managed to seize control of both the church and the government of the Imperium, ruling through terror and eliminating anyone who dared to question him. But then came a reformer named Sebastian Thor, whose growing following began to pose a real threat to van Dyer's iron grip. In a desperate move, Van Dyer unleashed a massive fleet of Frateris Templar, his own fanatical religious army, into the warp with orders to destroy Thor's homeworld of Dimamar and quash the rebellion before it could gain momentum. The fleet set off from the Clack system, but it never made it back. Out of nowhere, a warp storm erupted in the fleet's path, snuffing every ship before they could escape. The last astropathic message from the fleet spoke of blinding white arcs of light ripping through the vessels. This storm appeared without warning and defied any natural explanation. Thor's followers interpreted it as a divine intervention, the Emperor himself striking down Van Dyer's fleet. This became known as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath, and it continues to rage around the Clack system even today, 4,000 years after the fleet was reduced to mere dust. Navigators avoid that area like the plague. The Saving of Saint Celestine. Saint Celestine has a remarkable knack for defying death, and it's a phenomenon that stretches back thousands of years. Time and again, Celestine meets her end in battle, only to rise again. The official stance of the Imperium is that this is a direct act of the Emperor himself. The way it works is that when Celestine falls, the Emperor intervenes, catching her soul before it can disperse or taken by the dark entities of the warp. He keeps it in a sort of limbo until the moment is right for her return. It's not Celestine's will to cling to life, but rather the Emperor's will to keep her from slipping away. What makes her resurrection so striking is the timing. She doesn't just pop back to life at random, but instead she reappears precisely when her presence can turn the tide in a critical situation. Inquisitorial analysts have meticulously tracked her appearances over the centuries and concluded that there's a pattern at play rather than mere coincidence. The most remarkable instance was during the fall of Cadia in the middle of Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade. Celestine was resurrected, returning at the exact moment the Imperial defense of Cadia needed her most. But the power didn't stop there. She turned around and used the same gift on two of her own canonesses, Eleanor and Genevieve, resurrecting them as her personal champions, the Gemini Superior. Even after Cadia fell and she was finally worn down by Abaddon, she kept going, guiding the surviving fleet on their journey to Macragge. The mystery of the Pariah gene. The Pariah gene produces humans who have no presence in the warp at all. Individuals known as blanks or nulls, who are completely invisible to psychic detection, cause physical discomfort to psychers simply by standing near them and can suppress demonic manifestation in their immediate vicinity just by being there. In practical terms, they function as a living biological weapon against the warp, one that operates in an ordinary human body and requires no activation or maintenance to do its work. The gene is exceptionally rare, and yet it keeps appearing with a consistency that has puzzled Imperial scholars for centuries. Most populations go generations without producing a single carrier, and yet across millions of worlds and every human population ever studied, the gene continues to show up. Some believe it's simply a natural, if extraordinarily rare, mutation in human genetics. Others are convinced that the Emperor maintains it himself as a deliberate failsafe against chaos. Another theory points to the Necrons, with hints from the ancient Eldari suggesting the gene was planted into early humanity millions of years ago by a Catan star god called the Deceiver. What makes this worth including on a list about the Emperor's interventions is the mystery itself. If the Necron theory is right, then the very weapon the Sisters of Silence and the Calexis assassins depend on to fight chaos was planted in humanity by one of its oldest enemies. If the Emperor theory is right, it's one of his quietest and longest-running interventions, ticking along in the background for longer than the Imperium itself has existed. The Psyker girl at Parmenio. During the Plague Wars, Mortarion set a trap for Guilliman on the world of Parmenio, springing the ambush with Typhus and the Great Unclean One Kugath waiting alongside him. Caught against the combined strength of all three, Guilliman was on the verge of being killed outright. And then an ordinary girl walked into the middle of it, completely unscathed, while the Nurglite demonic forces surrounding Guilliman started burning the moment she drew near. She wasn't a trained Psyker and held no official status of any kind. She was nobody, and yet the light emanating from her was described by every witness present as unmistakably the Emperor's own. The lore describes her appearance as that of a living saint and the Emperor's power manifesting through a completely unsanctioned vessel at a moment when no other form of intervention was available. What this suggests, and what the Inquisition finds quietly difficult to sit with, is that the Emperor isn't limited to his established channels when he needs to act. Saint Celestine goes through a formal, long-standing process, but this girl did not. This means that at any given moment in a complete stranger, the Emperor might already be present. The channeling through Guilliman. For his next attempt, Mortarion and Kugath came up with something more permanent than an ambush, a deadly disease specifically designed to take down Guilliman for good. He named it the Godblight, crafting it to exploit the deep spiritual bond between Guilliman and the Emperor, essentially turning that sacred connection into a weapon aimed at the Primarch's destruction. Mortarion personally unleashed it on the world of Ajax, and to his satisfaction, it worked. As Guilliman struggled against the Godblight, the Emperor's psychic energy began to flow through him, but this time, there was no anonymous stranger standing in for him. The power moved through his own son directly. In a twist Mortarion clearly didn't see coming, Guilliman channeled that borrowed strength straight into the heart of the Garden of Nurgle. The strike tore through the Chaos God's own domain and set part of it ablaze, forcing the Death Guard to retreat. What makes this moment so remarkable is the fact that the Emperor, trapped on the Golden Throne and slowly dying, is simultaneously managing the Astronomicon, maintaining the webway barrier, and soul-binding incoming Psykers, stretched to an almost unimaginable limit. Yet despite all this, he still managed to channel enough power through a dying Primarch to set fire to a Chaos God's own realm. The Miracle of Baal. By the time M42 rolled around, Hive Fleet Leviathan had been advancing on the Blood Angels' homeworld, Baal. Chapter Master Commander Dante had done everything to slow their progress. He called in successor chapters from all over the sector and orchestrated a defensive campaign that was nothing short of remarkable in its scale and discipline. Yet despite all his efforts, it wasn't enough. When Leviathan finally reached Baal, Commander Dante had come to terms with the grim reality that the planet was doomed. He gathered the remaining Space Marines across the Baal system to make a final stand. Outnumbered and facing this shadow in the warp, the Blood Angels were being systematically overwhelmed. What ultimately saved Baal happened in two parts, arriving at almost exactly the same moment. The Great Rift tore open across the galaxy, and the psychic shockwave from its formation hit the Tyranid Hive mind at the precise moment it was fully committed to the Baal campaign, causing the swarm to lose its cohesion and start turning on itself. At the same time, Guilliman's Indomitus Crusade fleet arrived in force, and his fresh reinforcements finished what the shockwave had started. Baal was saved by a cosmic-scale coincidence and a fleet showing up at exactly the right second. Dante, who had come to terms with the likelihood of dying in a losing battle, believed that what happened was a direct intervention from the Emperor. The Emperor's Tarot. In the chaotic and unpredictable world of the 41st millennium, where psychic frauds are everywhere and mystical events can be hit or miss, the Emperor's Tarot stands out for one straightforward reason: it actually works. The Imperium believes the Emperor designed the deck himself, as it is a strange piece of technology disguised as a mystical artifact. The deck is made up of 78 psychoactive liquid crystal wafers, each one psychically linked to the Emperor's own consciousness in the warp. Reading it isn't as simple as flipping cards. They're laid out face down and revealed one at a time, with the second and fourth cards drawn serving as key signifiers that shed light on everything that came before. Specific card combinations carry specific, well-documented meanings across the Imperium. The Eye of Horus paired with the Great Host, an inverted shattered world, and a reversed galactic lens is recognized everywhere as one of the worst omens the deck can produce, typically read as the gathering of chaos and the death of entire worlds, the kind of warning that could mean another Black Crusade. The tarot only produces a precognitive result in the hands of a trained psyker. Hand the deck to an ordinary person and you get a random reading. As for its accuracy, the ecclesiarchy and the broader imperial cult view the tarot as one of the few remaining ways the Emperor can communicate directly with humanity now that he's confined to the Golden Throne. They hold it sacred, believing that he's the one offering warnings through it. What's interesting is that the Inquisition tends to steer clear of discussing its use of the Emperor's Tarot openly. Given how secretive the Inquisition is about nearly everything it touches, it wouldn't be surprising if their use of the Tarot is something they keep close to the chest too. Acknowledging its accuracy raises an awkward question about whether they're making independent decisions or simply following the Emperor's cryptic guidance. Thanks for watching until the end. Click here to check out another video and see you in the next one.